Welcome to the Frequency Labyrinth. I am Adrienne McDonald, your host. This podcast is for you if you're done with surface level self-help and ready for something deeper and actually transformative. Around here, we work with ancient wisdom, human design, gene keys, and shamanic practices, not as knowledge to collect, but as tools to live by. This isn't about one size fits all. It's about learning to work with your energy, your design, and your life. This is about integration and embodiment. We go deep here with ancient wisdom, practical integration, so that you can develop ironclad self-trust. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Frequency Labyrinth podcast. Coming off the new moon in Gemini that had so much Uranus influence, I thought it would be a good time to talk about Uranus today. And I know if you're on social media, you've probably seen a lot of posts around Uranus maybe in Gemini and what that means for tech, AI, etc. But I want to come at it from a different angle, a more personal angle today. And I know Uranus isn't considered to be a personal planet because outer planets are considered more collective energy. However, they can still give us insight. And the Uranus placement in human design is sort of your special sauce, if you will, or one of the places where you can find your special sauce. So I'm going to talk about Uranus through the 12 zodiacal placements and also how it fits into human design today. So Forrest has this line about Uranus that I love. He describes it as claiming your right to be yourself. So that's an interesting one. And the thing in us that doesn't quite fit the template out there. And then Liz Greene has a different take. And I find this fascinating because it complicates the thing, right? She actually warns against calling Uranus the planet of individuality. It's more like a current moving through you than something that belongs to you. And that is, it gives me like channel vibes. And so I've been sort of sitting with that tension because I think there's a little bit of truth in both of them. And I think what the question that actually matters is, are you conscious of what is currently moving through you? Are you being swept up by it? Because those are really two different experiences. And your chart has a lot to say about how you're living through that. So it's not just about who you are, but it's also how you work, your approach. That thing that comes so natural to you that you never thought about calling it a gift. And if you're building something like a business or a practice or a body of work, that's exactly the conversation we need to have, because that approach, your uniqueness there is your value proposition. And a lot of people are hiding it instead of leaning into it. So let's get into it. In astrology, Uranus is a generational planet. As I said, it moves slowly, about 7 years in each sign. So everyone born roughly within that window shares the same Uranus placement. And what that means, it tells you something about the flavor of an awakening for maybe a generation, the texture of it, the territory it moves through, but the house where it lands in your personal chart, that gets very specific to you. That's where the current enters your particular life. And it also can feel pretty ordinary from the inside because you've never known what it's like not to have it. We assume everyone sees what we see, makes the connections that we make, approaches things the way we approach them, and they don't. That's the whole point. So find your Uranus sign in your natal chart. You can go to astro.com if you need it. It's free. As I go through yours, I want you to sit with a question underneath everything I say. Like, what is the approach that's so natural to you that you've really never thought about calling it a gift? Not necessarily what you do, how you do it. What happens when someone brings you the problem and you find your way through it? That process, that particular way of moving, that's what we're looking for. So Uranus in Aries Someone with this placement expresses their uniqueness through courage, through independence, a willingness to initiate where others will hesitate to begin. They tend to see possibilities before anyone else and often challenge assumptions by simply taking action. Their originality comes from their instinct to forge a new path rather than to wait for permission. And it generally makes them natural pioneers who are often ahead of their time. Uranus and Taurus, someone with this placement expresses their uniqueness through what they value, what they build, stabilize. They often have an unconventional relationship with money and resources and security, or in the physical world, sensing that lasting stability requires evolution versus preservation for its own sake. Their gift is finding new ways to create security while remaining rooted in their own unique values. And then in Gemini, it's through ideas and communications, the way they perceive connections through seemingly unrelated things. Their minds tend to move in unexpected directions, making them natural innovators and teachers and translators of really complex concepts. They often challenge conventional thinking by simply asking questions that other people didn't consider. Uranus in Cancer expresses their uniqueness through emotional intelligence and their understanding of belonging. They often redefine what home and care and connection mean, refusing to accept some sort of inherited emotional patterns without really deeply looking at them. Their gift lies in creating new forms of nurturing a community that honor individuality as much as security. Uranus in Leo expresses their uniqueness through creativity and self-expression and a distinct personal presence. They're often drawn to stand out in ways that feel meaningful rather than attention-seeking. They bring originality to art and leadership and personal style. I think that their gift is showing others that individuality is not something to hide, but something to cultivate. Uranus in Virgo expresses their uniqueness through systems and problem solving, pattern recognition, very practical improvements. They have an instinct for spotting inefficiencies and finding innovative ways to make things work better. Their originality often appears in the details where they can transform everyday processes through insight and precision and unconventional thinking. In Libra, they express their uniqueness through unconventional collaborations and social dynamics. They often question traditional expectations around partnerships and seek more authentic, equitable ways of connecting. The gift lies in helping people reimagine what balance looks like, what harmony looks like, what mutual respect can exist without sacrificing individuality. And Uranus in Scorpio expresses their uniqueness through depth and transformation and willingness to explore what other people avoid. They're often fascinated by psychology, power, the hidden forces that sort of shape human behavior, and their originality comes from their capacity to uncover truths that challenge collective taboos. Sagittarius express their uniqueness through philosophy and exploration and the pursuit of meaning. They're often drawn to unconventional belief systems, new perspectives, experiences that expand their worldview. And their gift is helping others question assumptions and discover broader possibilities beyond just your generally accepted truths. And Capricorn is through structure and leadership with the goal of long-term achievement. They often challenge outdated institutions, seek innovative ways to organize businesses and governments or systems of authorities. Their gift lies in building the future without being constrained by the past. And Aquarius, it's all about social change and visionary thinking and naturally seeing beyond current realities, and very often are drawn to ideas that benefit the collective, and their originality comes from their ability to imagine possibilities others can't yet see, to inspire progress through unconventional perspectives, but it always impacts the collective. And in Pisces, it's through imagination and spirituality and the unseen realms of life. They often have an unusual relationship with creativity or consciousness or the symbolic world, sensing connections that can't always be explained logically. Their gifts are about bringing new forms of inspiration and healing and spiritual understanding into the collective conversation. Now, all of those placements take a different nuanced flavor depending on where they are, what house they land in your chart as well. So now that you have your sign, you have the territory of your awakening, the generational current you're part of. But when we look at this in human design, it gets really specific to you as an individual, specific to how you work and where it makes you, let's just say, genuinely irreplaceable in how you move in the world. In human design, Uranus activates a specific gate in your personality chart. And that gate, I think, is it's on the right-hand side of your chart, and I think it's the third one up. It's the one that looks like a circle with an arrow coming out of the top. And it's the specific way the current moves through you. When you understand it, something clicks in a way of how you've always approached things. And here's how I want you to look at this in the context of your work. Everybody brings knowledge to what they do. Everybody brings skills. Most people, if they're being honest, can point to others with similar knowledge and similar skills. What makes you genuinely irreplaceable isn't necessarily what you know, it's your approach. It's a specific way you move through a problem. What happens when someone brings you the chaos and you find your way through the process, that particular navigation, that's where your Uranus gate lives. That's your special sauce. And I don't think people will hide it intentionally. I think it's that it's so natural to them. It doesn't really necessarily feel like a gift. It feels like everyone must do it that way, and they don't. So let me give you an example. I'm going to walk you through my own placements. I have gate 6, the gate of friction, in my personality chart. And that is moving through the gene keys, that's conflict through diplomacy into peace. And I have Uranus in my 3rd house in Virgo. And Pluto is also there too. And what that genuinely means for me is in my work, how I move through conversations, ideas, problems, is I'm the one that asks the question that no one wants to ask. That's heavily influenced by that Pluto being co-present with Uranus in my 3rd house of communications. I'm comfortable in places that people want to get out of as quickly as possible. I'm super comfortable in chaos. Not because I enjoy difficulty for difficulty's sake, because I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for practical solutions. I go into chaos, I come out with maps. Gate 6 doesn't work by avoiding friction. The gift only emerges through the tension. The uncomfortable questions are the mechanism. What it means is if I try to smooth things over, make it more palatable, skip the hard part, I'm cutting off the access to the very thing I'm here to do. My approach is the gift. And when I look back over my career, I can see it. And I can also see where I would get frustrated because people weren't approaching things the way I did. Or they would give me a little sideways glance. I'm also not one for rules unless they have some sort of practical application. I can get very frustrated with that. There have been many times where I've been sitting in a conference room and somebody will explain some elaborate process that is some performative BS that we're doing for something. I remember going in and they were going to have us do documentation for a data dictionary that already existed. And I just looked up and I said, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. That is typical Uranus in Virgo, gate of friction, like all the things right there. But it broke the spell, right? When I said that, I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Like, why? Let's look, like, what is the root cause problem, which is another Uranus in Virgo thing. And again, heavily influenced by Pluto, because I want to get to the underbelly of things, right? So that's an example. Your gate's going to be different, but the question is the same. Pull up your human design chart, find your personality, Uranus, look at the gate that it's activating, and sit with what is the approach that's so natural to me that I never thought about calling it a gift. Not what you do, but how you do it. Okay? That's your gate. That's your mechanism. And think about how you can start leading with that. How you talk about your work and how you position what you offer and how you show up with your clients. Because the thing about Uranian gifts in business specifically is they don't fit into conventional job descriptions. They don't have clean names. When someone asks what you do and you try to explain it in standard professional language, something always gets lost, because what you're actually doing is operating from the place that's genuinely instinctual and hard to summarize in a sentence. And it's what makes you unique. It's the special sauce. The work is to find language for that approach and not to sand it down until it fits some sort of conventional language. So I'm going to give you 3 ways to work with the Uranus placement. You've got your sign, you've got your gate. First, stop explaining it and start trusting it. Whatever the quality is, you probably have spent in some way, shape, or form trying to make it legible for people who don't share it. Like translating it, minimalizing it, editing off the edges so it creates less friction. And I get that. You can also feel a little bit frustrated when people don't approach it that way. But I know. So think of it this way. What makes you strange makes you unique. And that's a good thing. So embrace the strange. So where do you explain yourself away? Where do you minimize? And is it because the situation genuinely calls for it, or is it because that your particular flavor of different makes people uncomfortable? Those aren't the same thing, and only one of them requires your attention. Second, find the thread. Uranian qualities persist. They survive reinvention. They follow you across careers, relationships, decades, and completely different versions of yourself. So look for what's been consistent, not your interests necessarily. Those can shift. The qualities underneath the interests, the particular types of problems that you keep being drawn to, the approach that keeps appearing no matter what context of what you're working on. So for me, it's always been the same. Go towards the friction, find the pattern, make it make it something that people can practically navigate. The context has changed significantly over the years, but the approach hasn't. That's the thread for me. So what's been consistent in you across all the different chapters of your life, your roles, different versions of your work? That consistency is pointing to something that's very tangible. That's where your Uranus lives. And third, let it show you what needs breaking. When something disrupts, when something ends unexpectedly, or a belief stops holding, or an identity starts to feel like it's a costume, the reflex is to rebuild what was. to get back to the version of stable that you recognize. But Uranus tends to break exactly what's keeping you from being fully yourself. I mean, it is the planet of liberation at the end. So, and in the context of your work specifically, it tends to break the version of what you do that was built around what the market expected versus what you're actually here to offer. And if you can stay curious in the middle of that, not bypassing the disorientation, but staying curious about what's underneath it, you'll often find what emerges fits you a lot better. And that's the invitation. So go towards that. Come out with the map. So, Uranus and Gemini, collectively, we're being asked what beliefs are still alive and which are just familiar, where we've confused certainty with truth. That is what we will be reckoning with over the next 7 years. Gemini is curious. Uranus is liberating, and together they create this environment where staying genuinely open becomes a really strong evolutionary advantage. Not the people with the strongest opinions, the people that are willing to keep questioning. And, I'm coming back to what Liz Greene said about Uranus being a collective current more than a person, because I think that another important thing to hold right now, especially with everything that Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries is stirring up around what's real and what's not, what's genuine, what's actually yours versus what's stimulation landing in your nervous system. The question isn't just about what Uranus is doing, it's whether you're conscious of the current moving through you and whether you're working with it intentionally or you're being swept up in the bullshit. So pull up your chart, find your Uranus sign, find your personality gate, Uranus gate in human design, and just sort of sit with the question is, what is it about me that I never thought about calling a gift? Because that approach is your irreplaceable thing in your work and what you build and what you offer and what nobody else can replicate. And that's your special sauce. Now, one more thing before I let you go, and I want to be straight about this. I'm giving you a framework here, and the framework is real and useful, and they're wonderful tools. But the way this actually lands, the way it stops being interesting information, it starts being something that you can actually feel and work with, is in a reading. And when someone knows the system and can look at your specific chart and reflect it back to you in the context of your actual life and what challenges you are currently having, that's when it stops living in your head and starts living in your body and in your life. That's when you stop grappling with it and start working with it. So if you want to go there, you can grab your free chart on my site. The link is in the show notes. And if you're ready for a reading, that's there too. In the interim, remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. Thanks for tuning in today. As always, take what resonates, leave the rest. Let whatever landed move through you in whatever way it needs to or wants to. And also, if you want to explore more, you'll find more information in the show notes. If this episode stirred something in you, please share it out or leave a quick review. It helps so much and I really appreciate it. And remember, this work is about integration and it always starts with self-trust.